Hello there, and welcome to the X106 Sportscast on YouTube. I'm Moss Hall, along with Trevor Mader and Luke Peterson. Today we're going to be talking about the NFL playoffs, particularly the Super Bowl with the New England Patriots and the Philadelphia Eagles, as well as college basketball, with a bunch of great games coming up over the weekend. So let's start with the Super Bowl, the NFC Championship game. The Philadelphia Eagles beat the Minnesota Vikings in a blowout victory. Nick Foles looked amazing. Case Keenum did not. In the AFC Championship, New England beat, the Jacksonville Jaguars in a very close, contested game. New England currently, as of this recording, is a 5-point favorite over the Philadelphia Eagles. Guys, let's talk about Super Bowl 53.
Super Bowl 52 is going to be an interesting one. This isn't the first time we've seen Philadelphia and New England as they met back Super Bowl 39. Obviously, a lot of different teams other than the one common factor in this one is still Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. I think this is a really interesting matchup because I think Philadelphia does everything well that normally beats New England. When you look at the games Brady's lost in his career in the Super Bowl and in the postseason, it's from teams that put pressure on the quarterback, particularly up the middle, which Philadelphia does generally well, and run the ball well. Well, Philadelphia's got two running backs that I think can do that really well. So I think this is a very winnable game for the Eagles, and obviously for the Patriots as well, as we roll into the Super Bowl. And if Philadelphia, if they play like they did in the NFC Championship game, and particularly Nick Foles, then Philadelphia might be the favorite in that game if they play that way.
Yeah, I definitely would agree because, we saw Philly just dismantle that Vikings defense that was stopping everyone basically. I always looked at the third down defense. They were allowing about 25% of completions on third down for teams. Philly was 10 for 14. And but before they let the gas off, I want to say they were like 9 for 11 or 10 for 12. Like they were playing phenomenal against that Viking defense that, that second half Drew Brees kind of went off, but most of the season against Kirk Cousins, Drew Brees, Cam Newton, Big Ben, they held a lot of those big-name quarterbacks to nothing, and then Nick Foles just shreds it.
And let's give Philadelphia credit, too, is mainly Nick Foles, there were some throws he made that they didn't make it easy on him. I think back to the one, I can't remember if it was a touchdown or not, but middle of the flea flicker as well. I mean, he had to put that in the exact spot. If that's anywhere else, that could very easily be an interception. So Foles made a lot of really good plays against a really good defense as well. It wasn't even necessarily in some parts the defense played terrible. Obviously, when you give up 38 points, there's some blunders that happen, but Philadelphia's offense just was able to find the holes and get the job done, and now they're playing the Super Bowl in 2 weeks.
And going back when Wentz went down against Los Angeles with the torn ACL, Nick Foles came in. He didn't look great against that Rams defense, let's be honest. It took him time to adjust. It took him time to get back into that starting role. Now he's looking at like the Nick Foles who just threw 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, almost won the MVP back in, I believe, 2013. He is looking legit. He's looking like a very great quarterback. This Eagles offense is on a roll. J.I.J. obviously helps with the trade from Miami. This Eagles defense, I don't think, is overrated a little bit. Of course, when you think about Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, they always have a game plan, and they're going to figure that defense out. They're going to put points up early. I think Philly's going to travel behind the entire game, and I just don't see them coming back.
I don't know, because, when we talk about defenses, you look at the first half of that game, the AFC Championship game, Jacksonville's defense controlled the game. Yeah. I think the problem for Jacksonville and why they lost the game is offensively they got a little too conservative.
Like Bortles.
And then just because of the way the play calling was. Bortles actually played pretty darn good. And also, there were a lot of times that maybe they should have sent blitzes that they didn't. You look at that 3rd and 18 play on that go-ahead drive. The pocket is totally clean for Tom Brady, and you cannot give Brady a clean pocket and let him climb the ladder and follow through his throws. So that's something that I think if Philadelphia does, you put pressure on Brady, as we saw the Giants do when they played him in Super Bowl. We saw Denver do it a couple of years ago. Put pressure on Brady up the middle. Don't let him climb the ladder. Make him go left and right. It kind of gets him out of his comfort zone. I think Philadelphia has the capability of doing that because you look at that front seven of Philadelphia, guys, that might be one of the top 4 or 5 front sevens in the NFL, along with the Chargers and Minnesota and Jacksonville. I think those are probably the best 4 front sevens in the NFL. So don't count out the Eagles in this one. Not to mention they got playmakers in the secondary as well with Jalen Mills and Patrick Robinson. So this is all around just a very talented team. Like talent-wise, I think Philadelphia is more talented than New England. But you got to look at the quarterback play with Tom Brady and Nick Foles. If Nick Foles doesn't mess anything up, he's got the weapons around him. I mean, if Nick Foles goes 19 of 30 for 225 yards and no interceptions, the Eagles will be in this game.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying Philadelphia is going to lose. I'm just saying that this Philly defense with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick with 2 weeks to prepare, they're going to put points on the board, as well as Nick Foles and Doug Peterson. I look back at the AFC Championship game. I watched the entire game back. Blake Bortles didn't even complete a pass over 25 yards.
Well, they weren't calling a lot of deep plays. I know they took a couple shots too.
That's just what Blake Bortles is. He's a check down guy.
Yeah.
That's what he does. So I'm not thinking highly of this Patriot defense at all. I think they've been overrated this entire year. I still think they have some of those chemistry issues with James Harrison coming back in his first Super Bowl. That's going to be an issue.
I don't know. The way Harrison's got this uncanny ability to kind of come on when you don't expect him to. I mean, he probably made the play that wins them the game there in the AFC Championship game with that sack. So I don't know that I totally buy into that. I don't think this Patriots defense is that good. But when you really look at the Patriots teams of the last 12 years, even when they went undefeated that year, their defense was not that good. They had playmakers on the other side, much like they do now. I mean, you got guys like Trey Flowers, who's been able to get to the quarterback, Stephon Gilmore, who made the best defensive play I've seen in a long time, Malcolm Butler. This could end up being a defensive struggle.
I mean, if you just look, a lot of these teams that have been successful, we haven't had too many complete teams that have won it in a while. Because, New England, like the last couple of New England teams, their offense has been great. Their defense has been subpar. Denver's offense was atrocious, and their defense was stellar. Like the most complete team that I've seen in the Super Bowl in the last couple of years
Ravens.
I'm saying, that didn't win it was Carolina.
Yeah.
They had the best offense league. They had one of the best defenses, but then they couldn't do anything in the game. Yeah,
I think back to New Orleans back in 2007. That was a great team.
Yeah, well, I think back when I look at teams that have overall teams, I think Carolina's up there. That San Francisco team that lost to Baltimore, once they got Kaepernick in and kind of found a rhythm, that offense was clicking. And their defense, because they brought back a lot of talent. Robert Williams suspended the early part of the season. They looked really, really good against West Virginia. Then they kind of hit a lull after that. And I think maybe they'll kind of come back around, and they could end up being a bubble team. But right now you're 2-6 in the SEC, which isn't necessarily a basketball powerhouse, although they have losses to Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama, who are in the top half of that SEC, but still they've kind of been a disappointment on me this year. I got 2 more questions, guys. The most underrated team right now in college basketball. It's not ranked, but should be.
Oh man, let me go look at the rankings again.
Asking sophisticated questions here, Trevor.
Honestly, I'm not a fan of them, but they're up and down a little bit. But I would definitely say this is like one of the better Creighton teams that we've seen, and I think this team, if they can play to the potential, this is the best Creighton team that they've ever had. I think this is better than the Doug teams.
Yeah, if they play their potential and stay healthy, I would agree. I'm going to go right now. I didn't think I'd be saying this 2 or 3 weeks ago, but given the way they've been playing lately, I'm going to go Kansas State. You look at how they're playing. I mean, they made Oklahoma look silly. They beat TCU. They beat Baylor. They had a 1-point loss to Kansas. They did have a couple losses to West Virginia and Texas Tech, but they also made Iowa State look silly. They lost to Tulsa earlier this year. When they're shooting well, they're really tough to beat. Barry Brown's kind of finding a rhythm. Dean Wade has been shooting well from beyond the arc. This is one of Bruce Weber's maybe more talented teams he's had at Kansas State. Well, what do you think, Austin?
How about Miami? 14-4. They are 6th in the ACC, but they've pulled up some great wins. They beat Minnesota by 5. We haven't talked about Miami as a basketball powerhouse in so long. It's about time they get mentioned, and they're going to be back. They're back in both programs.
They were in the top 25.
They were, but they fell back
out.
out.
They just dropped back out.
All right, so my last question here. The most overrated team in the top 25 right now.
Florida. I don't trust Florida at all.
I trust Florida. I think, you look earlier in the year, they had a close loss to Duke. They were kind of banged up. I think they're kind of finding a rhythm now. I like Florida a lot. Florida was my national championship pick at the beginning of the season. I don't know that I would totally back behind that now. But I think the way Florida's playing, you're in a wide open conference with the SEC. I mean, it's still really any one of 4 or 5 teams could potentially maybe win it. I'm not sold on Auburn just because their schedule, although
I'm going to wait till tonight against Missouri, because if they lose to Missouri, then, they'll lose my faith at all.
Honestly, Arizona State's another one. They have a couple of those big wins. They beat K-State, Xavier, Kansas, but since they beat Kansas, they've kind of fallen off. They got beat pretty handily by Arizona. They lost to Colorado. They lost to Oregon. They lost to Stanford. They're right now they're 3-4. They're 8th in the Pac-12, and so I'm not fully sold on them yet either.
And that's the way I was going to go too. My girlfriend actually knows someone that plays for Arizona State, so we watch them about as frequently as we can. And I caught the Kansas game and the Kansas State game, and I've caught some of the Pac-12 games. And you think back to the early part of the season after they beat Kansas, they jumped up to like third or fourth in the rankings, and they kind of became everyone's darling. Well, then it came time for conference play, and they weren't playing defense in non-conference play. And they got into conference play, and they really weren't playing defense. Remember, they had a loss to, was it Colorado they lose to as well?
Yeah.
Arizona, Colorado, Stanford, and Oregon are their 4 losses, right?
And this is not, and this Oregon team is not the same Dan Altman Oregon teams we've had the last few years.
This is not the Oregon team that made the Final Four last year by any means. Arizona State's defense is just not good. According to KenPom.com, it's 124th in defensive efficiency. Offensively, it's a really good offensive team. They're a fun-to-watch team with Trey Holder, who can kind of spread the floor. Cody Just is good from beyond the arc. But they're just – I think they're maybe a little overrated, and they're kind of sliding now. Aside from that, it's really kind of tough to pick another one.
I just realized St. Mary's was ranked. I didn't realize
that's because they beat Gonzaga. And
yeah.
St. Mary's is a weird team because you look at them, according to KenPom.com, they have the 3rd-ranked offense. But then on the flip side of that, they have the 122nd ranked defense, much like Arizona State. But they beat Gonzaga. Their losses, I don't think, are particularly great. But they beat Gonzaga, so they're in the top 25 now. But I would say probably Arizona State would be the most overrated team in the top 25 right now. And maybe that'll change, or maybe they'll drop out. I don't know. One of those 2 things will happen.
St. Mary's lost to Washington State and Georgia. So, Washington State is basement dweller of the Pac-12. But Georgia has played a lot, but the SEC, I think, Kentucky's taking a step back, but the SEC as a whole is playing a lot better than the past. Usually, it's been Kentucky 1, Florida 2, and then gap. And now we're getting a little closer, everyone together.
Yeah. All right, I have one last question before we get out of here. Next couple days are going to be some great games going on. Most likely upset from those games. You have Xavier Marquette, Florida, South Carolina, Rhode Island against Fournette, I believe. Auburn, Missouri, Cincinnati, Temple, Nevada, Wyoming. That's today.
I'm going to say Nevada, Wyoming, because Nevada doesn't play great defense either. They shoot the ball exceptionally well, but they don't play a lot of defense. And when you don't play good defense, you kind of put yourself in vulnerable situations. The rest of those matchups, I don't really see any that kind of pop out to me. I don't know that Auburn, Missouri is an upset either way, because I don't know that. I think Auburn's playing better, but they haven't played as good of a schedule as Missouri has. Marquette, Xavier, I think Marquette's better than people give them credit for. And Fordham, Rhode Island, I don't see Fordham upsetting Rhode Island. So I would have to say probably Wyoming over Nevada.
Yeah, I'd either say that, but I think I'm going to say the Marquette over Xavier tonight. I think that's a good one. You can those Big East teams, especially besides Villanova. I think it's kind of a logjam after Nova.
Well, you look at the Big East really right now. The only 2 teams I think legitimately will the Big East could have 8 teams in the tournament. I think, aside from St. John's and DePaul. Yeah, I could. There's somebody I couldn't even remember their name. I think legitimately every other team in the Big East right now could have a shot. Georgetown maybe it's kind of a bubble team, but they might get the benefit of the doubt with the schedule. Obviously, Villanova, Xavier, Creighton, top 3. Seton Hall's kind of dropped off. They don't play particularly great away from Seton Hall.
Providence has dropped down a little bit.
Yeah, so it's kind of, but still, I mean, you got probably 7 or 8 tournament teams right there in the Big East, I think. So that's a fun conference to watch.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that'll do it right here for the X106 Sportscast right here on YouTube. Next week, we'll give our Super Bowl predictions, and we'll look more at the college basketball rankings. For right now, Austin Hall, Trevor Mayer, Luke Peterson saying so long for right now.
Man, yeah, Haley, so a lot of talented guys on it. So, yeah, you look at this, I think Philadelphia might, obviously, I think they're a better overall team. That doesn't mean they'll win the Super Bowl because they don't have Tom Brady on their side. But we talk about, Belichick and Brady have 2 weeks to prepare for Philadelphia. Well, on the flip side of that as well, I mean, Philadelphia has 2 weeks to prepare for Belichick and Brady. And Jim Schwartz is a really, really well-respected defensive coordinator. And everywhere he's gone, they've had success defensively, even when he was in Buffalo and going way back to his days in Tennessee. So he could draw up some schemes and stuff and maybe give Brady some different looks that maybe Brady hasn't seen a lot of this year and kind of throw him off too. I mean, we saw the Giants do that in the Super Bowls. Atlanta did that for the first half last year, and then really kind of the pass rush went away, and that's when you saw the game turn. So the key is got to put pressure on Brady.
And one thing I think this line doesn't account for is Gronk. We don't know if he's going to be back. The concussion protocol is iffy. He looked wobbly coming off the field against that hit against Jacksonville. The line's at 5. I think if he comes back, it'll move up to around 7.5. Do we think he's going to be able to play?
I would say probably. I mean,
2 weeks.
Because you look at 2 weeks, the concussion protocol is normally a week. Mm-hmm. I would say unless it's some serious concussion, which who knows with Gronk, I would say most likely he'll be back.
I mean, you have to remember, too, the Patriots, even without Gronk, still play well. All these times Gronk misses, they still win games. So, I mean, they'll find a way. I mean, he's a major X factor, but if he doesn't play, then their offense still has to find a way to win. But, I think a big X factor will be the Ajayi trade that we had this year. Because, think about this. The Dolphins sent Ajayi for a 4th-round pick to the Eagles. So they send one of the best running backs the last couple of years to, at the time, one of the best teams in the NFL for nothing. I have it up there with the Greg Olsen trade at as one of the dumb.
Would the Bears get a 5th-round pick out of that?
Something like that. They got nothing for it. Still the worst trade is still the Herschel Walker to the Vikings trade because they traded the pick that drafted Emmitt Smith for the Cowboys.
4 players and 4 more picks.
Yeah,
for 1 player.
Minnesota didn't have a 1st-round pick. They had another trade too, but they didn't have a 1st-round pick for 40 years.
Yeah.
Because of that trade and then a few other trades.
So yeah, I think Ajayi could definitely be a factor in this game because Ajayi's good at not only obviously running the ball because he's a running back, but catching passes out of the backfield as well. And then you throw in LeGarrette Blount as well too. The Patriots know very, very well from his stints in New England. He's just kind of their bruiser. Then Corey Clement, as we talked about, the former Wisconsin Badger. He kind of adds another body in their backfield that's productive. So this is a really interesting Eagles team that I think legitimately has a shot.
We'll have the picks next week. Coming up, we can talk college basketball and some intriguing matchups. That's next right here on the X106 Sportscast. Welcome back to the X106 Sportscast right here on YouTube. Austin Hall, Trevor Mader, and Luke Peterson here with you. Guys, looking at the college basketball games coming up so far, we got a lot of good ones, and a lot of them are affecting their standings in their respective conferences.
Yeah, well, when you look at the college basketball season right now, we've gotten into the thick of conference play, so you're kind of starting to figure out what teams are. There's teams that are for real. I don't think there's any dominant team in college basketball right now, but there's teams that are for real. And now you're finding out teams that, okay, maybe they had the benefit of a weak non-conference schedule, and you're finding teams that, okay, maybe they had the disbenefit of a tough non-conference schedule. So this is kind of the part of the year where it's one of my favorite parts from here to the end of the season, definitely after football season ends, because you kind of figure more out about teams and you kind of study them for March.
Right, definitely, because you always look every year. Kentucky, Michigan State, they'll start off a little slow. Kentucky has been so loaded that most years they'll still start out 12-1 and all this and that. But Michigan State, they always struggle at the start of the season. They'll lose to a marquee team that maybe they should have beaten. But it's because Izzo is just playing around with that new team since a lot of them always leave. So he's just moving guys around. And then by the time we get to the end of January, start of February, they're starting to run the Big Ten again.
See, I thought we'd see that with Duke this year. This is a young Duke team aside from Grayson Allen. But really, they lost to Boston College and NC State, but really we haven't seen that big drop-off from Duke. Although defensively, I know they're not playing the greatest. They're ranked, I believe, somewhere in the mid-80s in defensive efficiency, according to KenPom.com. But they haven't ever had that drop-off. There really hasn't been that skid that I thought maybe they would hit. And they've been playing really well, whereas Kentucky, this is a young Kentucky team. I don't think this is probably John Calipari's, I don't want to say worst Kentucky team, but least talented or least loaded Kentucky team. When you look at, they don't have a guy that's probably a top 10 pick. Kevin Knox is their best player, and he's still kind of raw. But this is a team that, depending on the season ends, they could get into the tournament as a 4 seed or a 5 seed and be really, really sneaky for that top seed in a Sweet 16 matchup potentially.
Considering all the Power 5 conferences, looking at all the first-place teams, who do you think is least expected to win the conference?
I would have to actually pull up the standings to do that. When you look at that, you got
Kansas, Virginia, you got Florida, you got Ohio State, and I believe you have Villanova.
I'm going to say Ohio State. And I think Ohio State has really impressed me this year, and I think they're a really good team. But it's because when you look at Ohio State, they're 9-0, but they've yet to play Purdue. They have to go to Michigan, which is probably the toughest arena to play in the Big Ten. Other than that, it's not too bad. At Penn State, which Penn State's kind of a tricky team this year. You got Iowa at home. I got to see more out of Iowa other than beating Wisconsin last night to really jump on that. They host Penn State tomorrow night. So you have some winnable games, but you also have some trap games in the Big Ten. So I would say Ohio State's probably the least likely. I like Virginia. I don't see a scenario where Kansas doesn't win the Big 12 at this point.
Because I think Purdue is the best team in the Big Ten this year by far.
I think Purdue's maybe the best team in the nation.
Yeah, them and Villanova both are just top playing, lights out right now. So we'll see what happens because, Ohio State, they beat Nebraska a couple nights ago, but it was a lot closer probably than Ohio State fans would have thought. But I just think, we know that the top teams of the Big Ten, and then after that, that like 5 to 8 or 9 range is just so up in the air. We have Maryland, who is probably the worst Maryland team in the Big Ten because like they have come and just helped like be one of the perennial powers since they joined the Big Ten. But you have them, you have Penn State, Nebraska, who are playing some of the best they have in the Big Ten now. So we'll see what happens. But I definitely am the least high on Ohio State.
So I got a handful of questions for you guys, so we'll just run through while we're discussing college basketball. If you had to vote right now, the best team in college basketball is who?
Purdue.
I would say Purdue, too. I think you make an argument for Villanova. I think given Virginia's track record, their offense is not as bad as people like to say it is this year. But I think Purdue, which is funny because when they lost Caleb Swanigan last year, it was kind of, I thought Purdue would be a decent team, but not a great team.
They got better.
Yeah, with Isaac Haas and with Vincent and Carson Edwards, they're all playing really well. This team is really, really good. If the tournament started today, I might pick them to win it all. My next question would be the most surprising team in college basketball to you guys. Who would that be?
I mean, I haven't been able to watch as much because I was focusing more on the NFL, but I would just say either Penn State or Nebraska is a couple.
I'm going to speak from experience. I'm going to say Missouri. You lose your number one player of the year not even 2 minutes in. Somehow you're 13-6, and you've beat some very good teams. I'm not going to talk about that Florida game. They are right in the thick of things, and they've been playing very well.
I'm going to say Ohio State. You look at when Thad Matta left, it was late in the offseason, I believe April or May. That's not normally a time where a lot of coaches leave, so they were kind of scrambling to get a new head coach. They thought they had Greg McDermott, not Doug McDermott. That would have been something that would hire Doug. But they thought they had Greg McDermott. Instead, they get Chris Holtman from Butler, who's still a really, really good head coach. They might have actually ended up doing better off with Holtman than McDermott. They got who I think might be the best player in the Big Ten, and Keita Bates Diop. The way he's been playing lately is just insane. And I did not expect them to be ranked in the top 15. And I honestly wasn't sure they'd be a tournament team this year. But right now they're playing like a team that I don't know if they win the Big Ten, but they could be a team that could definitely make a run to an Elite Eight and a Final Four. Definitely if Bates Diop is playing the way he's been playing. So my flip side of that then to you guys is the most disappointing team in college basketball so far to you guys. Who would that be?
It's got to be Kentucky just because of their pedigree. I mean, you fall out of the top 25 for the first time in almost 15 years. And it's just not right for Kentucky not to be in the thick of things, you know. Of course, John Calipari has got to figure this all out before March, but I mean, you fall top 25. That's just not Kentucky at all.
Yeah, like I said, that's probably one I'd say too. Just like you were saying, you look at what they've done the last 10 years, and they've been just a perennial team. Like, even if they're not the best team, they're up there in the top. Like, they're usually around a top 10 teams. You know that they're going to be good, and then this year they don't have it fully figured out yet. So, I'm sure they could come back and surprise us and turn into a solid team. But as of right now, they're definitely one of the more surprising bad teams.
I'm gonna stick in the SEC, but I'm gonna go Texas A&M because what I